Thank you. Over here. Now I'll run out. Bądź zdrowy. Na zdrowie. Proszę was. I'm saying in Russian, Sharatova. Novom Zgodom. Novom Zgodom.
Skodom. Z Nowym Godem.
Z Nowym Godom.
You have to say that slowly.
Novom
Snowden.
Godom.
Godem. Adios. Thank you. Pleasure. From Manchester, England.
England.
Yeah.
Anglia.
Manchester.
United.
Manchester.
He's a football star.
אותו איפה שגר במנצ'סטר, ממש באולטראפורד. נורמלי. אמר לך, אז למה הוא לא הזמין אותך לראות משחק שם? איזה רואה גיוני אחד. בוא. משחק אני לא יבוא. גם ישלמו לי הטיסה. ומה אם ישלמו לך את הטיסה? וישלחו אותך לטיסה? Of ceramics in this city till today, since the beginning of the 20th century, is in the hands of the Armenians. This was an Armenian artist.
Okay.
And this is, of course, his signature being the least changed of things, which has been a little bit squashed and a little bit, it doesn't really matter. Everybody's here, from the Medusas to the silky, what are the Scottish mermaids called?
Gotcha.
I was so moved. I really can't tell you. I was so moved that they made this choice of this picture in this place with such prominence.
I know, it's very appropriate.
There aren't that many representations of Jerusalem because Jerusalem is its own representative. Yeah. You're not supposed to come and take a picture of Jerusalem.
Exactly.
And Jerusalem speaks for itself because everybody wants a foothold. And in Victorian times, the British weren't here back then, it was still Ottoman Turkish.
Yes.
Every major power in the world wanted to have a foothold here in Jerusalem, here in the Holy Land, and they were not in a position to open an embassy because there was no such place as Israel or Palestine. There was such a place as Jerusalem. So all these major powers, starting with the Russians, and we're talking now about the Tsarist Russia, okay? All of them had this foothold and tried to influence affairs here. There are only two which I'm going to try for us to get a foothold into.
Yeah.
One of them is the Latin Patriarchate, in other words, the representative of the Vatican. Try. And continue from there into the Greek Orthodox Archipatriarch. He owes me an awful lot, including giving us the intellectual property rights for the map.
Okay.
The old map of Jerusalem. Institut Français, you know that the Goethe Institute amongst German embassies around the world, there's a Goethe Institute, there's a Cervantes Institute where you go to learn Spanish, and this is the only one which is here and not in Tel Aviv.
The Institute Français.
Okay, Romain Gary. It's named after the French writer. And if any of my students, I'm not talking about visitors, I mean students, really want to get the whole thing in an image, I'll bring them here and say what the whole French Revolution was all about.
Actually, I want to get a photograph of that. My friend Pascal will be impressed.
rampart. You know, a line like this, the Scottish line. A line rampart. And this is what was left of the competition for decorating the lions of Jerusalem. It's hardly what you asked about order. If you look at this building, you see all the pock marks from 47, 48. And this is the beginning of the wall. Divided Jerusalem between 48 and 67.
Right here.
The wall was here. The wall came down, and only David Ben Gurion said not just the wall which divides, but the whole city wall should be taken down. You imagine what World War III would have looked like?
Yeah, I know. But here's the thing was that Jerusalem will never be divided again, right?
It wasn't his thing. It was actually the thing of the philosopher advisor, geographer philosopher advisor to the then mayor of Jerusalem.
Okay.
What is it?
This is the lowest sculpture on earth by a sculptor called Ullmann. He took two of these manhole covers, one here, one there, saying only together can they function as a water infrastructure. And that's what they look like. He's then got a whole philosophy about where the pipes go and why the pipes can't be broken up and shared and divided even underground. So he said at this point, which is called ground zero, at this point, ground zero, this is the left hand, and there, in that direction in the old city, in the new city in Jaffa, is the right hand, with exactly the mirror image.
Okay, cool.
When you hear the voice of the bells, or the voice of the muezzin calling the faithful to prayer, you know that what you just said is true.
Yep.
Let's go in and try our luck.
Yep.
Good morning. Is somebody here by any chance? Is it Gloria? Could I just use the toilets downstairs and then we'll go and look for him there? Thank you. My friend, everyone is here. This is Joe Naval. Good luck.
Where are we now, Benji?
We are looking for Samir.
He's not here.
No, I was told that he's at the Gloria. I went to Malta to justify that particular painting of a knight of Malta who is an offspring of the Franciscans. I'll tell you about the Franciscans. This is a crusader master, and this is the lion mantle. Everything in this country is symbolical. Wherever you look, if you don't know what it means, go and learn where it comes from, who put it there, and what was his agenda when he did so. Come downstairs. This is the most brilliant piece of mosaic, which is not of the view, not of man, but of the Knights Templars with the cross of Jerusalem. This is the emblem for generations upon generations of Arab, Christian Jerusalemites. It's called the Jerusalem Cross, and it's adopted from the Franciscans, who are the ones that are responsible for all church property, all Vatican property in the Holy Land. What is called Custodia Terra Sancta, custody of the Holy Land. And they're the guys that we have to look at, not at Dan Brown, even though it's useful to have that stuff kind of, humming behind your ear. You really want to see and know, you have to find out who the Franciscans inherited their papal mandate from. What was the purpose of it? What is the purpose of it today? The building next door with the high school, the best high school in Jerusalem, the very best high school, of all levels. The Franciscans were the ones who actually brought this to the present day after they'd already received the mandate from that which was cancelled by the church. And in the office of my friend Samir, who is the manager of this, he's the cornerstone of the alliance that I'm trying to build here in Jerusalem for commercial purposes, of bringing our exhibition of maps to all the population of this country, starting with high school students, which we've already been given a mandate for from the Ministry of Education. They don't know what it's all about yet.
I don't need to use it.
Okay.
Okay.
These are the remnants of the Crusader castle which was built here, called Tancred's Tower. Tancred was one of the kings of Jerusalem and one of these 9 families. And this building, which is all Vatican property, remember that the Vatican once again has a symbol. There is a symbol of the Vatican as there is a symbol of Roman Catholic property, which is or which may not be. We're about to get thrown out. The apostle.
So again, Petrus means...
Petrus means rock.
Okay.
Peter, Pierre.
Peter. And in Arabic?
In Arabic, as a personal name, Petrus is the Peter.
Mm-hmm.
And my friend Peter calls himself Butrus. There was once a Secretary General of the United Nations
Peter Gali.
who called himself Butrus Gali. And by the way, he had a Jewish wife. And by the way, he was a Copt.
A Copt, yeah.
He was from the Coptic Church. The ones who are getting steamrolled now by the Muslims.
Yeah, in Egypt.
In my official profession, David, of surveyor and mapmaker, cartographer, where most of our work is done by remote sensing, by drones and by satellites, if something is true to the extent that it was exactly what Moses received on Mount Sinai, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
What Moses received was chakuk b'sela. This is the sign of a licensed surveyor, that he actually takes his hammer and chisel and marks the place. And therefore, in Hebrew, if we say something is absolutely true, irrevocably true, then it is hammered, and this wouldn't pass because of the E.
Not carved in stone?
No, you don't say, maybe you do say carved in stone. I've never seen the expression in English, so it may well
How do you say it in English?
I say it in Hebrew, chakuk b'sela.
And in English?
Carved in stone. And this I discovered here. There is in fact a basketball court somewhere behind these walls. And what the man wanted to say was even sport at the level of NBA is something which Jesus is attuned to and belongs to. So Isa Isa is the name. Here is the emblem of the basketball. This is the basketball itself. And here, of course, is the net. And this is actually made by those men who still make a livelihood and chiseling rock to put on facing stone or here.
He says in Arabic.
See this? Sorry. Here someone put some additional graffiti here. But each one of these stones is chiseled like this, hammer and chisel. It's the very fact that Jerusalem is no one's. There are 1 million stall holders, people that have licenses to do this, that and the other, including the fact that they're written down in the Talmud. This is the property of the church. The biggest property owner in the old city, in the whole city of Jerusalem, is the Greek Catholic, the Greek Orthodox Church, which I'm going to try. Assalamu alaikum. Which I'm going to. A gentle Christian priest, Arab speaking.
Again.
A gentleman. You saw how he was dressed, and he had the dog collar. Okay,
Right.
so he was a priest, but not one of the glaringly obvious. Everywhere you look, there is another organization, another collective of people. Everybody with their own
Agenda.
But the agenda in this particular case must be respect for the other's agenda, and there isn't that yet.
Yeah.
That doesn't yet exist. The Greek Orthodox priests in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre go fisticuffs with the Georgians. So we went to Georgia to see what exactly does the church in Georgia have by way of holding the faithful by the book.
Yeah.
And I found it. And I can't tell you how much heartache went through the people who put up these. It's all Armenian, okay? I wanted to try and get us to Armenia today, to the place where, since 1920, since the Armenian massacre by the Turks, they were brought here to redecorate the church of, the Dome of the Rock. And I want to bring them here to do in a place where I hope we'll be able to build our center one of these days, to bring them and redecorate the mosque, which is part of the central building, which is recognized and respected by Jews, Christians, and Muslims alike. The place is the tomb of the Prophet Samuel. And I only use the Arabic name of the place because when they say it in Hebrew, it's mispronounced. You know who the Rosary Sisters are?
Nope.
You know what a rosary is?
Yes. See, I'm not. Catholicism is completely
It's
alien
nothing to do with Catholicism.
Yeah. Who are the Rosary Sisters? Aren't the Rosaries that funny thing that the
That's it.
Catholics
It's
have?
called worry beads.
Is the name basketball is the game? That's cool.
Number 2, pray for the priests of Jerusalem. It doesn't say the Pope.
I saw that.
It doesn't say the country.
So the priests.
And we are part of the priests of Jerusalem. We're the one who have discarded our priestly garments.
Oh, can I mention something completely unrelated? Do you know Israel won the European basketball thing this
So I heard a rumor about it.
year? I just thought maybe
I also understood that there was a Mondial in Brazil.
a what?
Mondial. World Soccer Championship.
That was in Brazil, yes. But the basketball thing is important too.
No, basketball is nothing. I haven't played basketball since I was 18 years old.
I was right since I was 16.
Here, my friend, 2 important emblems which you don't need. You really don't need. This is the official emblem of the Vatican.
Okay.
These are called the keys of St. Peter,
Yeah.
and these are the triple crowns which the Pope no longer wears,
Okay.
because he's decided to go.
Simple.
And this is a mishmash of different things. First of all, it's from the Scouts. the Christian scouts
Okay.
with the reef knot. Yeah, nothing to do with reefers. The reef knot, which is one of the basic knots that you learn in scouting.
I was never a scout, yeah.
It doesn't matter. And
Looks
fleur de
Irish.
lis.
What?
Fleur de
Oh,
lis.
fleur de lis, yeah. The-
Once again, with the little stars being the stars of Bethlehem.
yeah.
Okay, we could have just shot something there, but we didn't.
And
And
the,
of course, at the very heart of the whole thing,
Jerusalem logo.
the Jerusalem,
shield.
not shield, not logo, the Jerusalem,
Star.
right. And this is where the main Latin patriarch sits. All the properties, since we came through the new gate, all the properties that there are here, all belong to and are part and parcel of the representation of the Catholic Church in the Old City, because in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre they've got a tiny little chapel. The Old Cross of Greece, under the king who was deposed in 1973 by the junta, the colonels of Greece, that which put Mikis Theodorakis, for example, into prison. And when they finally found a modus vivendi with the Greek Orthodox Church, based then in Constantinopolis, in Istanbul, they had two emblems. This emblem of Greece, which is embedded in the national flag of Greece. You can't see it very well from here, but we'll go around the other side to see it. And the second emblem is a red cross on a white background, which is actually the cross of the church and of the British and of the Georgians. The Georgian national flag is exactly that flag that we just passed. The Jerusalem cross, one red cross and four small red crosses.
And what do you say about the football?
And on the way into the next stage of the Old City, you notice there's nothing happening here.
Yes.
This is not Jerusalem. In the height of summer, this is not Jerusalem. The muses have been silenced. The
What do you
muses-
say about the football, Benji?
About the Mondial. The British fans that came to, the English fans that came to Brazil to watch the Mondial were painted with a red cross on a white background, which is exactly the other part of the cross of Taufe. And I will speak at length about Taufe because it's frightfully, frightfully important.
No, I'm joking. I'm trying to show you.
How are you doing? Good day, my friend.
How are you doing?
I brought visitors from overseas.
You brought visitors from overseas, but you're a man of very many resources, so I'm not surprised. How are you?
Good to see you.
You know you must hold on until you feel the heart of the other person beating, don't you?
If you've seen the morning I've had, you will understand that I cannot feel the other.
In that case, we absolutely shall not detain you.
Not at all. Have a seat and have a coffee. I can't say because I have to go in about 5 minutes. But I'll sit down with you.
I met your brother.
No,
He
I
gave me
have.
your entire timetable for the next 5
I have to
years.
go to Bridgella. Come. ماريو شوف لي بالنايتس ايش في
We're not disturbing.
خشب في بالكنيسه بلا كله كسر
يعني 151 الشهر.
كله. Come. How are you, gentlemen?
You're very kind.
I'm very well. Nice to meet you. Where are you from?
Canada, but I live in England.
Ah, okay, great. Have a seat.
So many of you come damaged to your head.
You know, when I get stressful, all things start to become. What are you looking at?
I'm looking at the invitation which you haven't yet given me to come and look after you.
To look after me.
Yeah.
God looks after us all.
In that case, I'm happy to be the agent.
You're the agent of God and Almighty. Yeah.
Made it up.
Okay, good, great. I like I love your imagination. This is fantastic.
No man in Jerusalem or elsewhere is actually worthy, as Samir is, to look after this kind of property.
On the contrary, I think there are many more people who are more worthy than I am. I should be retired. somewhere in southern Spain.
I told you
Spain,
I
or
should come
southern,
and look after you.
or southern France or something like that.
Okay.
You know.
Where are you from?
Jerusalem.
Oh, you're from
Yeah,
Jerusalem.
yeah, Palestinian. I'm a Palestinian Arab.
Okay, no, I'm a tourist, so I
Yeah,
have to
yeah.
ask.
Ah, okay.
I mean,
Yeah, sure.
everybody's
No
a blank
problem, no
until I
problem.
ask them the
No
question.
problem, no problem.
So you're from Jerusalem?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, I know some Arabs in Manchester from Jerusalem.
Ah, really?
Yeah.
Which family?
I don't know, but his name is Sohib or whatever. And I
Yeah,
don't
so
know
I
which
probably, yeah.
I don't know which family he comes from. He doesn't like it here, he likes it there.
Not sure. I know Manchester. I did my first degree there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I know it, or I knew it. I used to know it. I mean, it's been a very, very long time.
Do you know Jerusalem?
Not as well as I
When
did
you went off
Manchester.
to Manchester looking for, beautiful Mancunian ladies
Yeah.
and a name to your art which would provide you with a livelihood,
Yeah.
wasn't the place completely different when you came back?
Sure. It's always the same. It's always different, very different.
Or Jerusalem?
Ah, yeah.
Samir,
But then this is-
in these 2 days when I've seen you, the place is dead.
What do we do? People are dying.
I tell you what we do. The guns have to stop firing
Mm.
and the muses have to be reactivated.
Absolutely.
That's what these gentlemen are here to help us do.
Inshallah. Inshallah, very good. Excellent.
David is a dual citizen. He has both Canadian and British nationality. He works out of Manchester. He's an aspiring politician to run for candidature in the British Parliament.
Yeah, next
And
match.
Isaac is from Melbourne. Is a universal mathematics teacher wherever he can put his program around the globe. Listen, you heard me, Le Chador. I can do the same for you, it's okay.
You are the manager of Jerusalem.
Yes.
A manager?
Of Jerusalem, Benji tells me.
Benji is the manager of the world.
He just wants a little corner with a shop front that says Isa is the name and basketball is the game.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You sleep,
That would suit
you
me
sleep
fine.
well at night. You sleep well at night.
I don't sleep well at night because my lady, the one that we once spoke about in terms of officially getting married to, wants to have no truck whatsoever with the phenomenon which is called Jerusalem. And if I was just a little bit more practical, I would say she was right.
And you never found out before?
No, the deeper I got into Jerusalem, the closer I got to the Holy Grail. And the Holy Grail, unfortunately, doesn't sit either in...
It's moving all the time.
Exactly.
It's moving.
You like Tel Aviv?
I don't know Tel Aviv well enough.
You don't
I
know
like
Tel Aviv?
going to the beach there. It's nice. It's relaxed. I think Jerusalem can be very tense because of the religious tensions
Yes.
between the different societies.
And you don't think in the end that's going to kill off all men of good faith?
Look, difficulties exist everywhere. I think this is a problem. Men of goodwill will always exist, and there's more need for them where there are problems and difficulties. And ultimately, this is why you keep on coming back to Jerusalem.
I keep coming back to Jerusalem because of you and Peter.
Yeah.
I've long since passed the stage where I think that anything very much can be done, but maybe something small which can act as a lighthouse to others, I do believe.
Here's our tea and coffee.
Which
so
is
much.
why, by the way, I invented the East Jerusalem Hotel Proprietors Association.
You know, for some Israeli, Tel Aviv is like the holy
Okay.
city.
You will now
Really?
learn after
Because they
me
like
in
all
Arabic,
the
Mutashakir.
I like
cinema,
Tel
the eat,
I like
Muta.
the nightlife, the
Muta.
restaurants.
nightlife.
What's that
But
mean?
also people
Thank
are
you
much
very
more
much.
relaxed.
Muta.
Why can't, don't you just say
Yes.
I
shukran?
find them very
No,
relaxed and very
that's
easygoing.
course.
Not like
Ah,
Jerusalem.
that's why
Jerusalem,
it's
you
saying
say hello to somebody, he looks
Calvary.
at you upside down,
No.
like, why are you swearing at me, They have a different attitude. in Tel
Yes.
Aviv.
And this is what Benji's ladies feel. She's in Tel Aviv is my And he tried to convince her, no way.
I know many people who used to live in Jerusalem but decided to move to Tel Aviv, not for economic reasons, but for social reasons.
Yes.
Either because their neighbors are difficult to cope with, or religious, mostly the religious aspect. They wanted something more relaxed, something more cosmopolitan.
You feel that Jerusalem has changed a lot in the last few years or decades?
Absolutely, it's very polarized now, very, very polarized. It's not the Jerusalem I grew up in. Jerusalem I grew up in, it was sort of, well, East and West Jerusalem I'm talking about. Was already,
You grew up in the 60s in Jerusalem.
yeah, correct, yeah. Before 67. But even the early, the 70s.
Which year, sorry Samir, which year did you start studying in Manchester? 60 what? 67?
No, 70 odd.
Ah, okay, so you're a little bit younger than I am.
Yeah.
So, okay, so when you lived in the Jordan occupied part of when it was divided?
In Jerusalem.
When it was the Jordan part, was it?
It was Jordanian, yeah. I remember the Jordanian, I remember the 6 Day War as well.
Of course, my
Do
father
you
was born
remember a
here.
British general?
1923, he was born in
Do you
Jerusalem.
remember a British general called Glub Pasha?
Glub, Jordan, he was more in Jordan then.
Yeah.
Well, he was the head of the Jordanian army, but he was British.
Till he got sacked in
Yeah.
54.
Listen,
Well,
nobody can hold on in Jerusalem. Nobody.
He shaped, I think he shaped the Jordanian army. I think.
Yeah.
I would say that the shape that he put it in and left it in didn't really leave them in a good situation, let's say in 67. It didn't. But today, the Bedouin fighter tradition of Muhammad and his father, his late father, I think they're in an excellent situation to do quite a lot with the ISIS, I don't know how you call this, Daesh.
The Yash, they call it in Arabic.
Daesh. Daesh.
I call it Al-Duri. Because I know who's really behind it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's a horrific aspect of today's history, you know. I think it's something which is horrific. It is,
Samir, what are we going to do? What are we going to do?
you know what really amazes me is where do they get their money from? Where do they get the arms from? How do they get it through borders into Syria, into Iraq?
None of that interests me in the slightest. Not the logistics, not the economics.
Why?
What bothers me is why has hatred triumphed?
But doesn't hatred go hand in hand with love?
It goes hand in hand with and needs to be overcome in order that love can ultimately triumph.
Otherwise, men of good faith like yourself will have nothing to do.
I thank you.
Benji, nice of you to come in.
Thank
Very
you.
nice to meet you. Okay.
All the best. It's hard.
He is, in blase terms, a Jerusalem brother. And I have many of them, of different sorts. And one day I am absolutely going to get the whole thing together to operate and to act in the name of all of humanity. That they'll know that Jerusalem is where it's from, Jerusalem is where it goes out from, and where ultimately Jerusalem, where I can't take you today, the timing is not right, to show you the Holy of Holies, and for us to tread on the sacred rock. Okay?
Shall we pay now?
It says true Arab hospitality, which we were offered in the way of coffee.
Samir the boss here?
He runs
He runs.
both as manager, as active manager, and to this day I have not yet seen a single guest.
Okay.
Arabic is Halim. Halim is the friend of God.
It's just that Montefiore is quote traffic. The sense of the British.
But maybe you didn't hear that little anecdote that I told the people in the tourist office. That every single geology and geography lesson at university where I studied, every single one of them started by, okay, what's the name of the Mount of Tavor? In Arabic, he went through all the categories of villages, streams, cities, mountains and everything else, types of tree, Tud is the alternative or the prior name to whatever you want to give it. In other words, it's essential to be part of this country and to understand its roots, also to know all the names, the geographical strata of the different eras.
Exotic granate fresh, limonada fresh.
This is the Tamarindi of today. And here we are, my friend, the Jaffa Gate.
The Jaffa Gate.
It's the Jaffa Gate going this way, and it's the Hebron Gate going this way. This is one which we may or may not get to see. It's the main northerly entrance.
Okay.
And in this direction today, everything that we're interested in seeing is East Jerusalem. As an introduction, Tom Hanks doesn't get it.
Cool. Hang on.
Now the other one pointing to the Jaffa Gate.
Hey. Okay.
David, I don't think it's necessary to come up and read what's written here, but believe me, this is where our friend walked after dismounting of the Jaffa Gate, came here and addressed the troops and received the keys to the kingdom, the keys to the city from the Mufti.
This was Alamy.
Listen, we are being looked after. Okay? Stay where you are.
I know who
David, for your surmisal, a British village church
In Jerusalem.
from the period of the 18th century, as she is in Jerusalem. This whole compound is called Emmanuel, and the church itself is called Christ Church.
Cool.
Everybody gone?
It's just me and Alex.
So how do we go into the
About to
church?
head
I
back.
take it.
Let me throw this.
This is David from Canada.
David from Canada, which part?
Toronto, but I live in Manchester, England.
That's what, yeah, the accent's a little English.
And this is Isaac from Melbourne.
But he used Australian and New Zealanders to conquer Beersheba and thrust it in the middle of the country. Because he had failed two battles, well, he had it, his previous guy, Chet Werder, he had failed two major battles in Gaza, like 12,000 British dead, like huge war cemeteries in Gaza.
It's one of those places, guys, and nobody's ever liked it. Yeah.
Right, and it looked like because in Hebrew, Azza means stronghold. It really was a stronghold. You couldn't thrust into Palestine because of it. So they switched generals. Allenby then decided to attack the end of the line, Beersheba. They'll come out of the desert. They won't expect it. So he sent his Australians out into the desert. Did a tricky a feint where he moved his troops from the west and made it look like they were going to attack from the west, and then they came in from the east.
Do you have nothing? What we call Jesus
Yeah.
in the original language, the Hebrew and the Aramaic,
Yeah.
which was
Okay.
the common parlance here 2,000 years ago.
Yeah.
His actual name in Hebrew was Yeshua.
So Messiah is not correct.
No, Messiah is something else.
That's the job function.
Yeah, sure.
The name is packed with meaning. So, because Messiah is a redemptive character
Yeah.
in Judaism, and so the name and then attached to the Messiah is also full of redemption because it actually means salvation.
Yeshua means salvation,
Yeah.
and the concept of Messiah actually means the anointed one.
Right. And he's a redeemer figure, so he's going to come, he's going to make everything better. He's going to make the politics better, the land itself will get better, everything.
He's not a god, he's a human.
In Judaism, you actually have multiple streams. They won't admit it, but it's very true.
Okay.
Like when you read Dead Sea Scrolls, okay, which is a Jewish sect.
That you asked me about?
Yeah.
Qumran.
Okay, they have a fantastic scroll called the Melchizedek Scroll, 11Q13. You'll find it on the internet. Read it, and it talks about who the Messiah is. They give him a name, which is Melchizedek, and then at the end of the scroll it says Melchizedek is Mashiach, and Melchizedek is Yahweh.
Yeah.
The God.
Okay.
Right? Because they say that the Redeemer himself. And then you have Rabbi Akiva, who says there are two powers in heaven, which he gets from the book of Daniel.
Yeah.
Right? Daniel looks into heaven in Daniel chapter 7 and he sees kisot, not kiseh, he sees thrones, not a throne.
Yeah.
So there was a stream of Judaism before Christianity that actually believed that there was another power in heaven,
Yeah.
and called the two powers in heaven theory. And not only that, Ben Azai looks into heaven, sees God.
Do you know who Ben Azai was?
Copulating.
Ben Azar.
Populated.
Wait, four people looked into the Pardes. Ben
were there?
Azai, he's in the Mishnah.
Ah, the Pardes.
He looked into the Pardes,
Yes.
and he saw God copulating with the Shekhinah, the feminine side of him, and
Yes.
then he died. Okay, and so you go, wow, where is the story coming from? It's resonating that even in Jewish tradition there was this idea that God had a female consort, that there were multiple powers in heaven. The Redeemer can't be a human; it has to be God Himself. Hence the words like Immanuel and Sar Shalom, very powerful expressions of Redeemer figures. The stream of Judaism you have today only says it's a man. In fact, it's become the state itself. The man figure is stuff.
You'll have to explain that to me. That's not self-evident.
Right, but look at Chabad. Chabad have turned
The
their Redeemer
Lubavitch
figure.
rabbi, the little card that I gave you. With the,
Yeah.
Yes, but he's
He
coming
didn't
back.
die.
He didn't die.
He didn't die.
And if he did die, he's going to be resurrected. And he's coming back. And they even call him the creator, the Redeemer.
Yeah, I know, but
And they're a Jewish group, 100%. So you cannot say that a Christianity woke up one day and
So
went,
when did this guy drop dead?
1993.
1993.
Yeah.
So is Chabad like similar to a Christian sect?
Okay,
Yes.
there is a Jewish joke. What is the closest thing to Judaism? Chabad.
Chabad.
Okay? And all you have to do is take out the name Menachem Schneerson in some of the...
That's a very, very...
and put in Yeshua and you'd be like, ooh, it sounds exactly the same. Because they're drawing on the same textual source.
Yeah.
Okay? Like Christianity didn't start in a vacuum. You have to, everyone knows that. Everyone knows that the first Christians are obviously Jews. And they're already packed in
What I said to you about the Jerusalem Church, the
Yes.
alternative version of the real
Exactly.
Jerusalem Church.
That's right.
This is the real Jerusalem Church.
Yeah.
In other words, its roots,
Yeah.
its lithography,
Yeah.
its prayer books,
Yeah.
and even its architecture. You hear the a cappella possibility? I might think of singing Bach to you from here, but...
Judaism
David, excuse me, you need a flash of
loves mystery.
The what, sorry?
Loves a mystery.
That logo.
And so what it does...
I know
this
that.
is Alpha and Omega. Now, again, everything that you find in New Testament, you must look for in Hebrew Bible first, and you'll find it. Okay. Sefer Yeshayahu.
So what's this?
Alpha, Omega. Itzhaki will tell you the exact value of Alpha and the exact value of Omega.
All of this is packed with meaning, right?
Yeah.
So in Greek, Alpha, Omega. In Hebrew, Ani Rishon, Ani Achoron, which you find in Yeshayahu Mem Chet.
And this emblem is what we're talking about, the Chabad, the Lubavitcher rabbi. Their emblem on their flag is the crown.
Yes, the Atara.
In Kabbalistic terms, this is the highest sphere, which is called Keter.
Kesser.
And what is this symbol? The
This
dollar
actually
sign?
is Latin.
Dollar sign.
Yes, I know.
like a
but
snake around a
it's
tree.
actually Latin because there's no J's in Hebrew, Greek, or Latin. So this is Isus, okay, Yeshua, but Isus. Okay, hominum salvator, Jesus the Savior of man. Okay, so that
Salvatore.
the sacrifice then redeems man.
Okay, and what are those words? What does that
And
say?
this is Immanuel, which is actually not the name of the Messiah. It's his job function.
You mentioned earlier.
Elohim Itanu. And because Messiah is a king concept. Okay? And the whole idea of Malchut HaShamayim, the kingdom of heaven, and there's also a...
Which, by the way, apropos the Pardes, the four letters which make up the word for paradise.
Yes.
Yes, paradise is drawn from Paradise.
Yes, it is.
Another time I'll go a little bit deeper into the whole business of the symbology used here, the sources that it's derived from.
Come from Hebrew Bible.
Yeah.
What's this say?
This is actually from what Jesus said at his Seder dinner, his last Seder. Zot asu lizchoni, do this to remember me, which is actually a very Jewish thing to say because Zachar is the most common command God gives his people in the Bible. Remember, 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 because people keep forgetting. But the way you remember in Judaism is to do. So when God gets his people out of Egypt, the very first thing he says is actually go make a calendar.
Yeah.
Right? He says, this is what he does. He says, write down on your calendars the 14th of Nisan. Actually, he calls it Aviv. Nisan is actually a later.
There is a reason for that.
I know, but he says, start counting months, start counting moons, and make sure that next year you get together and do this. Yeah. Because if you don't, you'll forget. You might not forget, because you might not forget the fire from heaven, the darkness and the earth, the streams and the wind. Yes, but the future generations will forget. So the way you remember is to do. And in fact, in the Bible, even God remembers. It says God remembers Noah. That doesn't mean that God forgot Noah and some sort of angel tapped him and said, hey Lord, there's this guy floating around on a boat for like 150 days. Oh my gosh, this is horrible. Pull the plug and get the water down and have a rainbow. That's when he remembers, he does. And so this is actually a very Jewish concept to say. He says, do this to remember me. So there's a large amount of Christian practice, or liturgical practice, is just the action of remembering an event.
When the tribe of the descendants of Moses had left or had been taken out and rescued from a life of slavery, this was what the whole exercise was. At Mount Sinai, what we call at the status of Mount Sinai, the Hebrew people, those who were following Moses through the desert for 40 years, actually undertook, without knowing what it involved, and blind, they say, we shall do, and then we shall say.
In Hebrew?
Na'aseh v'nishma.
So it's an analogy to...
This is what it's about. Na'aseh v'nishma. In other words, we will not ask for explanations of why you say do this, do that, and do the other, or even remember. Yeah. Remember that I took you out of Egypt and out of slavery.
And is it tefillin a similar issue?
Absolutely. It's incremental parts of Jewish prayers from whichever stream they come from.
From whatever stream.
The Muslim religious authorities to completely redecorate the Dome of the Rock. Completely, 1920. In the last years of King Hussein as King of Jordan, when he was well advanced in dying of cancer, he donated 90 kilos of gold for putting on the Dome of the Rock.
Oh, okay.
And I'll tell you, probably the most moving moment that I ever had in Jerusalem was when King Hussein piloted his own Learjet, which was decorated in the national colours of Jordan, and he had 2 F-16 outflyers who took him for a trip, a slow trip, through the air and the skies of Jerusalem, came over the place where I was at the foot of the Western Wall, and I swear to you, he did this with his wingtips.
How old was he? He was about to die.
He was about to die. He was still fit enough to pilot his own jet. He was still fit enough to meet all those people he needed to before signing with Rabin the peace agreement between Jordan and Israel.
1994, yeah.
is the oldest church in existence and the first and the last which adopted Jesus' tongue in order to bring their liturgy to the faithful.
That's the oldest church
They speak Aramaic.
until now.
Their liturgy would be discernible to you, and inside, of course, we fell on a place where the gates are locked, there are workmen down in the crypt. So do what you can and check in Google what this emblem stands for, looking for this name, which is the official name of the church.
I've taken a photo of it.
And I must tell you this incredible story which I went through, not here.
Yeah.
I was with my then wife in Windsor,
Okay.
where the Queen's second home is.
Yeah, I've been there.
And we were having a cup of tea in a place, opposite Woods of Windsor.
Yeah.
If you know anything about cosmetics and perfumes.
No, I
You
don't.
haven't? Okay, never mind. And between the two of us, we were talking Hebrew, and there was this woman who was extremely agitated and kept sidling up in our direction. She said, "You must forgive me. You must forgive me because your language is so familiar to my language and the language of my church, which is not Arabic,
Aramaic.
certainly not Hebrew." And she said, "Can I please ask of you to tell me what language it is you're speaking, because there are words here and there which I can understand from the liturgy."
Yeah.
And this is the first time I'd ever heard of this minuscule church called,
Syriac.
and everyone that's left of the community here in Jerusalem, once again this story of getting a foothold in the holy city. All the family, the ones which are just coming to chuck us out here.
Yeah.
Okay? Remember the name because it has an absolutely fascinating story in Google.
Yeah.
I've got the material, but it's
I'll
too,
look
it's
that
too
up.
heavy.
When I've got...
The last time I was here with a party of people, we literally got thrown out on our, what do you say, on our butts.
Where's the church here?
Here, this locked church is the church. The alternative version. They are the closest things which exist today of the original Jewish Christian faith, which actually had this understanding that when Jesus was crucified, the papacy of the church, of this little church, these few followers, the papacy was handed on to his brother. His brother, the one whose convent we've just come from, Saint James, where you peeked inside.
Yes.
He was thrown off the corner of the Dome of the Rock. He was killed.
Wow.
At that stage, the fellow travelers who were Jewish decided to smuggle the wife and the children of Jesus to France.
The Last Supper.
The Last Supper is here.
Really?
It's a tapestry of Da Vinci, which actually shows Jesus and Mary as a single entity, and with 11 other apostles beside the two of them. And that was the first explosion. Almost immediately within the first century after Jesus, there was in fact this incredible schism within the church of the Orthodox, the Eastern Church, and the Catholic.
Yeah.
The split with the Orthodox and the Catholic,
Syriac.
Protestants. Here we go. We may just be in that. We're from Australia. You go and read. It's in our head.
Take your seat.
Thank you.
Take your seat.
Shukran awal.
You talk English.
Please.
You are welcome. This is the first church in Christianity. The house of Saint Marco's mother. The apostles chose this house The same language Jesus used it in his daily life. Still, there is 1 million of us speaking Aramaic in their houses as the first language. It is the language of our baby, the language of the prayers. What's important in this place, this inscription. They discovered in this place. At that time, there is thick cover to all the stone of the church. They knocked it to let it in you, while this inscription appeared, covered by material who kept it, written in Aramaic, the language of Jesus, from right to left. Say that this is the house of Saint Martha's mother. The Apostles choose it to be the first church in Christianity after they received the Holy Spirit here, the top of this church, destroyed for the first time at 70 AD, when the Marshal Titus came to this town, destroyed all the town, and rebuilt 3 years after 73 AD.
The Arch of Titus.
In the upper room of the house down, Jesus did the Last Supper, also washing feet. Down the real place for the Last Supper. When Jesus decided to do the Last Supper, sent 2 of his apostles, St. Peter, St. John, told them, "You will enter the city of Jerusalem, and so men carry a jar of water. Follow him to know the place where you can prepare for the Last Supper." At that day, only the women carried jars full of water. The men at that time prepared themselves to the war to keep the land if anybody attacked them. Jesus put in the mind of St. Mark to stand in the market, carry the jar. The apostle know him, follow him, until he reached the house of his mother down. They entered, they asked him, "Our master wants you to show us where we can prepare to the Last Supper." They prepared it in the upper room.
This was the house of the mother of Mark. Is there the possibility of going down into the crypt?
No.
Is it being repaired?
Now, there is a preparation.
Ah.
A water from the Nepal came with the electricity engine. They cut the wire.
David, downstairs there is a smaller...
Hello. Close it.
Close?
Close it.
Okay.
I sing to you the Lord's Prayer. Our Father in heaven. In Aramaic, the language of Jesus, to let you hear this language.
Yes.
2 or 3 minutes. شمبو وبرو وروحه حي قديشو حاد أروه الشريرو أمين أبو ندبش ماي نسق داش الشمو
Amen. Amen.
This is so beautiful.
Yeah, this is the language of Jesus. Of course, every day, morning, evening, we pray in this language. Each Friday there is here liturgy. Each Sunday another liturgy in the Holy Sepulchre. Each Wednesday another liturgy in El Gethsemane. At least 3 masses weekly, every day, morning, evening prayer. You are welcome.
This was beautiful, and I want to give you the blessing of Jesus, not in Aramaic, not in Arabic, but in the original language that he used here for doing the blessings. Everything that happened here was in Aramaic, but the blessings were something else.
Listen, you have no permission to put your hand on my head.
I wasn't going to, but never mind.
Stop.
Well, this was an incredible experience.
Yes, it was.
And I learned more from what didn't happen than from what did. It's all summed up here. The Syriac Church is the first church. What we actually were trying to think, this concept of the Christian Jewish church, the Church of Jesus. That's what Jesus was. He was a Christian Jewish church who had no disciples other than Jews. Hammering the theological message home.
Of course.
That's what the word means. Hammering the Catholic message home is called propaganda.
Not Catholic.
Not Catholic. Propaganda. The Catholic Church. What were you thinking? When the Muezzin opened up in prayer, he's recorded by the way, so you can't stop it. Okay. What were you thinking the moment that he started prayer?
I was
Summoning the faithful.
I was thinking about what we got there.
It would be out of place. Because it's a whole different truth. I don't want to go at this stage any further towards the Dome of the Rock.
You want to avoid?
I took a trip to Malta in order to suss out the connection between the Templar Hospitallers who inherited the Templar fortune and became a well-wishing, good act-doing, chivalrous order, the Hospitallers with the Maltese falcon. If you want to go into Google, you can understand what these 8 points of the Maltese cross, what they are. This was the garment which was worn by the warriors of the hospital order before they became a first aid organization. In Britain, if there's a garden party to the local regiment, St. John's ambulance. Why March 2000? Because it was absolutely certain to all the authorities in this country that the year in which the Pope revisited the Polish Catholic Pope, Wojtyla.
John Paul II.
I think he was John Paul II is indeed what he was called because he took his name from the previous 2 popes, John and Paul. The John that there was there, and I say this again to you with all due respect, the name John and John is actually the death of Christianity or the Judaism in Christianity.
Okay, well, I don't like the name John anyway.
Anyway, okay. In this country, they were absolutely convinced that when the Pope came here, at the same time as Jesus was going to be reincarnated for his return visit, that there were going to be thousands upon thousands of people suffering from Jerusalem syndrome, lo aleinu.
Which means?
Jerusalem syndrome means something very simple.
Yeah.
Something happens to people when they are in the air and on the ground of Jerusalem who are absolutely without any kind of background of mental instability or illness. They come here, they start chucking their clothes off, they start burning down the Al-Aqsa Mosque.
Wow.
And it's known in the psychiatric lexicon as the Jerusalem syndrome. And they were convinced there would be hundreds and thousands. In the end,
how do you explain the Jerusalem syndrome?
I don't.
What's the cause?
I've read an awful lot about it.
Tell us.
I still don't claim to understand it, and neither do.
On one leg.
On one leg, all that you can do with Jerusalem syndrome is cure it. And you can only cure it by a huge dose of calming the person down physically, putting him on a plane and flying him back to Buenos Aires.
I mean, what's a trigger? What triggers Jerusalem syndrome? On one leg.
It isn't a story for one leg.
Second leg.
All I can tell you about the standing on one leg is that Jews do not generally suffer from it. I'll give you an example of one who did. There was a South American-born Florida real estate guy, very, very young, who came here with his millions. The first thing that he did was to buy the most important football team in this country, soccer. Okay? His name was Aguirre, not that important. The last place he was known to have inhabited as a free citizen was that he was climbing the fence into Gaza, and when the soldiers came and pulled him down, he said, "I'm just going to release Gilad Shalit." And they said, "Okay, sunshine, you will be disappeared." And he was disappeared. They put him back on his ship in Florida, and the ship was found abandoned with no Aguirre.
Why do Jews suffer or enjoy Jerusalem syndrome less than
Because
Christian?
Jerusalem is full of the kind of energy that Jews, please excuse me, this is not favoritism, but Jews know how to utilize, what to do with it, and to keep a level head. What we are talking about is actually the attempt of people like me, may I rest in eternal peace for saying so, who actually try to bring down celestial Jerusalem to an earthly Jerusalem. And there are people, by the way, there are two offshoots of this particular disposition called Jerusalem syndrome. One of them is Americans in Florence, and the other is Japanese in Paris.
Really?
Some similarity.
You'll find it on the net, you'll find it as an explanation, you won't find it as a therapy because there is none. And we all know the dangers of Jerusalem syndrome. It's jihad.
What do you mean jihad?
Could you paraphrase?
It's jihad. Once you became a fanatic of Jerusalem and for Jerusalem, you'll kill.
Okay.
Is there any chance?
Jihad is the ultimate Jerusalem syndrome.
Is there any chance David will get Jerusalem syndrome?
No way.
Why not?
Because he's got a Jewish soul.
That's why?
He has a Jewish soul, and there's no danger whatsoever of him picking up this thing by chance. He's not going to. I already seen him a couple of days wearing the same clothes, so he's certainly not going to run through the streets of Jerusalem discarding
naked.
His raiments of garments of things.
I don't want to get sunburned.
See? I saw him when he was climbing that. That is not Jerusalem syndrome.
Oh, that's
Jihad is Jerusalem syndrome.
Really?
An organized, massive threat that the Jews may actually occupy Waqf land underneath the dome of the rock.
So even this kind of madness you associate with.
Absolutely.
So, is Jerusalem syndrome sort of almost like an anti-Jewish thing?
No. All I said was that statistically, Jews are not that prone
to it.
to the business. It's not that they cannot. This guy that I was describing just now, the South American multimillionaire, he was half Jewish.
Okay, so it's a form of fanaticism.
It's a form of fanaticism which is totally of the soul.
Okay.
And jihad.
Benji, do you have some form Jerusalem syndrome?
Do I? I have been known at times in the past to go way beyond what should be said and what should be done and with whom, and I've usually been forgiven.
It's because of the Jerusalem influence triggers.
Absolutely. There are days when I've come back from a day in Jerusalem, business meetings, checking out things, visiting people, that I come home and I'm capable of flying. One of my friends, who's a medium, said, you do realize, don't you, that it's not Jerusalem syndrome that you are serving. But the serving is being done for you to test and try your ability to live with this incredibly, what is the word in English? Something that's conflagracious. Something which is incendiary. Jerusalem is incendiary. It has nothing to do with the temperature of the air. It has nothing to do with the state of the trees. It has nothing to do with the degree of commerce which is being done in commercial centers of it. But it is here. It is here for one and all, and it is in such an incredible condensed mass, basically of religion and basically of faith, that it is not safe for the world. I know people who have left Jerusalem, who have ceased living in Jerusalem because of the dangers which are inherent in Jerusalem syndrome. There is no cure. It can be diagnosed as, if it lasts between 3 and 4 days and no more, then it's easily tranquilized and flown off the planet. And it's been for me a heavy burden because Jerusalem does it for me.
But it's both happiness and high and highness.
Everything. It's everything which is a high level of energy and energy between people. You
like
check out. You check out now when you get home. Make your own little booklet of the people you spoke to today. What you spoke about them. You'll never find another place on earth where you can go through a similar experience anonymously. Nobody asked you your name. They did formally say, so where are you from? You're from Australia, da, 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 da. And each one of them had a message. Each one of them had their way of saying, we are Jerusalem. And I'll say it again in simple terms. All that I see people that are actually afflicted by one thing and another is the ability, the hope of bringing down celestial Jerusalem to earthly Jerusalem. And it ain't easy.
Amazing. Interesting. Toda rabba. Thank you.
Come, my friends, I'm taking you to an African village. Poor priests.
Why they're poor?
What I just said, by the way, David, is that these are the living quarters of these dirt quarters. This is what they live in. They were relegated to the roof of this church, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. And I once had to smuggle a rifle through this church because I was working with soldiers who were not allowed to have their rifles out. It was Shear's unit. Shmone Matai. Do you hear? And they look after the little which the Coptic Church has managed to squeeze over the battling Gregorians, the battling Georgians, and above all, the battling Greek Orthodox, who are the big daddies of the whole of the Christian world, actually. Wonderful. Check out that picture. On the right of the gentleman with the elephant tusks, you can see he's a chassid. You can film it afterwards. This is what I was talking about. These are the three colors of the Ethiopians: green, yellow, and red. And the Rastafarians in Jamaica added black. Black, the color of the skins; green, the color of ganja. Grass. The sun.
Which grass?
Grass. It's the official weed of Jamaica, no? It's called ganja.
You don't smoke it.
You
don't smoke it.
I think there's plenty enough in Jerusalem in the air that you can smoke to get as high as you ever like. That's my problem. These three tiny chapels are all the Ethiopians and the Copts have as a share of the holiest building in Christendom.
The church of the Holy Sepulchre.
This little chapel, the two that we've come through. I think we may also find that this is St. George and the Dragon. I didn't get through to the end of the symbology of this, but St. George and the Dragon is familiar to an awful lot of Eastern Orthodox churches. This is the English flag at the top, which I keep telling you about. The English football supporters paint a red cross on their face, and at the edges, white wristband. And they're a terrible lot. They are a terrible lot.
English sports fans are terrible.
English football supporters.
They're dreadful.
Do you know that it's lucky that David lives about 1 kilometre away from Old Trafford, the high temple of British football?
Yes.
And he supports who?
It doesn't matter who he supports, he just listens to the roar every time a goal is scored.
Yes, I can hear it. Also when they're losing and they get tense, you can hear it.
תשגיח על בנג'י, בנג'י חכה, תשגיח עליו. בנג'י, look after you. Benji, תשגיח עליו. Go beyond Benji, it's very slow. You can even molest him. Fine.
territory, nothing to do with making peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians. Correct. He's on this massive campaign on the cross, bathed in oil, and then buried under Calvary. Yes, on this stone.
So he is the holiest of holiest for the...
No, the holiest of the holiest is the place where he was buried.
He wasn't buried. I was just placed here.
This is just the place where the women did the dressing of the body. I don't want to tell you who is who, but one is his wife and one is his mother. And they were both called Mary. There's one entrance here and one entrance here. This particular courtyard was renamed Abustan Hasfaradi. The mulberry trees in here are actually part of that same bustan. And there was a fabulous educational project of printing on stone the history of the various families that lived in this particular environment.
Good.
They even bothered to have it simultaneously in Hebrew. So the house belonged to the family of Rabbi Binyamin Halevi, and you can see when, in actual fact, from 1880, the folks came out of the walls of the old city. First of all went to Yamin Moshe, named after Moses Montefiore.
Yeah.
And Montefiore, of course, is the name of the book. The historian who wrote
Simon
for you,
Sebag, yeah.
Simon Sebag Montefiore. And it's one of the most charming corners because it isn't flooded out yet with visitors who know or don't know about this particular project. Another one here, all around here. And when I have the time to take you properly in a place where we can go from place to place by car, we'll do a little tour around this area, which is called Itzraki Nachlaot. Each one of these little streets was an individual neighborhood. What do we see in the old city? What we see here, and that is high walls, binyan efes. In other words, the street comes right up to the house.
Benji, what is this? The Samechtet stuff?
It's exactly what's written there, my friend.
These are my guys.
Agudat Bet HaKnesset.
So what is it in English?
David, take a picture and I'll tell you and blow it to you.
Yeah.
I'm telling you that everything is Kabbalah.
Kabbalah.
Everything is Kabbalah, what you call Kabbalah, okay? The name of the synagogue is Chesed and Rachamim. These are two of the spheres of the tree of life.
Okay.
Chesed is this.
Yeah.
Chesed is the symbol of Abraham. Rachamim is this. In other words, it's also on everybody, on the assumption that every body and each soul on the planet
Yeah.
is actually a microcosm of the whole universe. This on the human body is Rachamim. This on the human body is Chesed.
What's the difference?
Love. There's a difference. There's a huge difference. And you have to study Kabbalah all your life to understand what the difference is.
Okay.
And why you give somebody a right hand and not another hand. Okay? The left hand, for example, in Kabbalah is Chesed V'Din. It's the female side. The whole of the left side is the female side. And if you see Israelis or Jews with a red band around their arm, this is the sign of the blood, of the menstrual blood, which is red here.
Yeah.
And on this side is the white sperm loop. In other words, once again,
Okay.
the gentleman called Moses, who is the symbol of Chesed. I don't want to go too much into it, but remember. Okay? You don't know that I lit the candles for you on Friday?
No, I don't know.
You weren't aware of the fact that I...
Could you translate this label?
The thing on the top? The thing on the top is...
Save.
Go on.
Save King David from the Vatican.
Good idea. The Vatican's a threat.
In other words, let the house of Israel, to be more precise, the royal house of King David of Israel, saved from Catholicism in the form of the Pope.
Or conversion.
Who could actually afford to give us a day and a half and no more.
You know, somebody we know would love that.
But make sure you get the platter with the bread and the candles and the wine.
I've got everything.
Good.
Yes. Ooh, David, look at this. That's Israeli.
He's not Israeli.
What's Israeli?
No, it's Jerusalem.
Oh.
The cats in this city are of a different breed altogether.
Do you think they're Buddhist cats?
No.
No.
There is a very good reason, David, why Buddhism has never caught on in this part of the world.
Wow.
You know what it is? Because Buddhism believes essentially in suffering. It believes in life being a series of painful exercises which you have to learn how to live with.
To liberate from.
And with that, you have meditation and prayers and the 14th Dalai Lama.
Yeah.
I must tell you what happened when the Dalai Lama came to Israel.
That's fascinating.
Do you mind?
Yeah, go
It's the opposite, Benji.
No, do you mind if I tell you what happened when
Not
the
at
Dalai
all.
Lama
Go
came
for
to
it.
Israel? Israel at the time when they wanted to invite the Dalai Lama, Israel at that stage was developing commercial ties with China, so that the whole Israeli economy eventually would be an annex of the Chinese. So they couldn't officially invite him as the official guest of a people in exile, because it would have offended the Chinese who were occupying Tibet.
Yeah.
So what they decided to do was that the host body would be the Society for the Protection of Nature in Israel, who would take him to Eilat, to the highest mountain in Eilat. And when they got there, it's called Har Shlomo, the mountain of Solomon. When they got there, he said, this wise man, if not the wisest of men, this wise man, he said, from here, I can see 4 countries. I see the Hashemite kingdom of Jordan. I see the kingdom of Ibn Saud. I see Egypt. And of course, we're standing in Israel. And then he said, I wonder how many countries God can see.
אדם, בוא נצלם אותו, עוצר אותו.
I love Amsterdam. So do I. No, just
אנחנו נצלם אותך, עוצר אותו.
מה פתאום? זה אובייקט. Okay, we're all going into the American Colony Hotel.
Welcome.
Pleasure to be here.
This place has two specialities. One is making peace, and the other being the place where nobody yet knows, but the Palestinian-Israeli peace accord will be signed in one of the rooms upstairs where I take you.
Okay, cool.
Everlasting
Our
peace.
friends, the Balian, the Armenian,
Oh, of course.
are responsible for the entrance. We've come to smell the diplomacy and taste the Tiger beer. Is that okay?
It is.
You're very kind. Where would you suggest we see?
Four.
How can we say this possibly? بس الثلاث للسيف.
Very nice.
Jihad, many thanks to you.
You are welcome.
And hope the tourist situation improves.
I hope so.
People start talking to one another.
Hope so. But this season is gone, you know. This year's.
It should also be a reminder of not reverting to the situation, as you call it, but going somewhere else. That's why we are Sufis. Many
Thanks so
thanks.
Benji, you are a Sufi.
And I have to say, when all is said and done, and all the nonsense that you want to flag at Jerusalem and Jerusalemites, this is my favorite place.
Oh no, it's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful.
This is serenity, harmony, and all sorts of people from all sorts of places in the world coming together and expecting an encounter. Once they've parked their car in the back, which says diplomatic corps, consular corps, TV, and this and the other. This is where Tony, who may or may not be worth his weight in gold.
Tony Blair is a very intelligent man, and although he was a lousy prime minister, except in foreign policy where he was brilliant, he did do some recent speeches which I had said had great insight and went a long way for Tony Blair. I thought the Blair Doctrine speech he did this year was brilliant. But I never liked him when he was prime minister.
Why? Why was he such a dead loss?
Because he just spent too much of my money. He raised taxes. He spent too much money.
But he turned the whole economy onto one of the third. What do they call it? The third way, the third path.
It was better under Major, the economy. But Tony Blair was right, I think, on his foreign policy. I think he was very good there.
Booted out the Templars, booted out the people that made this place close to being a paradise on earth, and they simply didn't succeed. They didn't get there. But you do understand that was their aim, and that was their goal. And I will take you to the place where in this building, the end of this process of what you call medieval will come to pass and will come to an end. And it will be jihad. In exactly the sense as that guy understood, I call him and I call it jihad. You understand the assignment and the agreement will be done here in the Pasha.
I hope so.
You're an optimist, Benji.
No, I'm a prophet.
You're a prophet, that's the problem.
And by the way, in a place where
A humble prophet.
in a place where prophecy is forbidden, you do know that.
Yes.
Prophecy has actually been forbidden for 1,400 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Because that was the last prophet.
Yeah. So you was
Are you with me?
I'm with you.
Okay.
Always.
I want to take you for the view from the room in which all will be signed.
Okay, so we'll finish the coffee and then
Which
we
has
go
got
and
nothing to do with prophecy, by
we
the
go
way.
and prophesy and get the final peace
Would you like
agreement.
to order the bill?
He is order it.
Yes?
No,
Yeah,
we
First
finish
of
coffee
all,
first.
he's gonna get the coffee.
When you bring my coffee, you can bring my bill.
He doesn't
Okay.
move without coffee. I don't move without 3 coffees.
You already had your 3
Tell
coffee.
it be safe. David, I don't speak much Arabic.
I speak very little.
I don't speak much Arabic. But I learnt an awful lot
Sorry.
from my Bedouin pupils.
Ah. Thank you. Shukran.
Good, David.
Thank you, honey. David, after me. Hashem.
Hashem.
Not Hashem. Hashem.
Hashem.
Not Hashem.
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 Thank you, Hashem.
That's your name.
David, thank you, Hashem.
Thank you, Hashem. We're inside the American Colony Hotel.
This is what people come to Cairo and Damascus in order to kill for. This is a method of decorating on a base which is called Ham el Khalil. And when we come down, I'll tell you where this Khalil is.
It's like the royal court.
How would you like that in your salon?
What's Pasha? Pasha is a
Basha is
Turkish.
the rank of the person who actually
Sit
occupied
down,
this room.
You are now the Pasha.
Gordon Pasha.
Adam is the Pasha.
בבקשה להישאר.
Adam Pasha.
This is a world leading function.
Being prepared. This, my friends, and you can have it in writing, this room is the place where the agreement is going to be finally signed.
Really?
אתה מבסס הכל על תחושת בטן?
לא, על זה שאני נביא. אבל אין נביא בעירו.
אחד זה תל אביב, לא ירושלים. So this is what the sign was.
No, I don't know where they signed it. They didn't sign it here, they signed it in Oslo. The negotiations took place. You must understand that when there is a Muslim grave, and they actually build a structure above the grave itself, where the sheikh is buried, it has this above. It means that we, down here on earth, are servants of what takes place up there in the firmament. I think that's the right word, firmament. Completely, but it doesn't really matter because the place has got the vibes.
It's a high ceiling.
Yeah. Which we haven't even dwelt upon the significance of the Calvary.
צחקי,
The chairs are blue.
זה שיש בתוך עץ.
נכון.
זה שיש בתוך עץ.
וזה האדם מה שנקרא חאן אל חלילי.
וואו.
In the Muslim, Dawood is Nabi, Persian. Yes.
דומה מאוד.
אצלנו אנחנו אומרים דאוד זה נביא. אתם אומרים מלך, נכון?
النبي
النبي داود.
النبي الملك داود فهمناها؟
Very nice to meet you.
Me too.
Saba No, Masal al-Khair. And also Masalama. Okay, Masalama.
Thanks so much.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Ah, the balcony. Hello.
David, these buildings belong to the families. These are private residential units. The one is in the East House, which has been recently refurbished. And this is where the founding family, the Vesta family, the American Christian socialist Vesta family, joined up with a Swedish Christian socialist family and built the American Colony Hotel, which this was not the original building.
Where was this one?
I have to check it out, and I have to check out which family it was that sold it to the American Colony. יצחק כי באופן כללי אתם בכיוון לרחבת הכותל.
أهلا.
This, in connection with the northern part, the Arab part of the city, is actually the main stream to the Temple Mount and to the, I have to call it by its proper name, the Dome of the Rock. Yeah, but I don't usually use the name in English. It's an expression. That thing also goes for words, by the way. If what you say is echoed by a bird or a dove, then you know you said the right thing in the right place in the right way, and no one has come to any harm.
So you're being echoed by a bird?
Benji, what is Via Dolorosa?
Via Dolorosa is the virtual path of the 14 stations of the cross which Jesus took from his last journey, schlepping the cross on his shoulder to the place where we saw in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the place where he was crucified. And from the same place he was crucified, his mother and wife took him down and dressed the body and left him in the Holy Sepulchre. And he disappeared. Raised from the dead?
Yeah, well.
So this is station number 3. Okay? The stations are actually numbered number 3. And this is the main eastern exit. The main eastern exit from the old city, where from after coming down the Mount of Olives, where from Jesus stopped 3 times and something else happened to him. You don't realize this is Yves Saint Laurent, these headgear stuff. They're not there to be modest, they're there to be singularly outstanding. Gentlemen in white, sometimes in white with a golden robe over them, are those who are returning from prayer at the holiest place of prayer, and it's a sign that they are Hajj. Hajj? Hajj means that they are Muslims who have undergone the chief commandment of Islam, which is to make the pilgrimage to Mecca. All of these folks are returning, and half of them are righteous men like these 2 gentlemen. And the more white you have, the more righteous you are, and clean your heart and clean your soul. Okay? We'll go 1 or 2 stations forward, and then we'll break off and cut in the direction that you want to go. Chucky, come a little this way. No, not to me. In that direction. And take in the 5th station. Okay. The main street of Jerusalem was from the gate we came into to the Zion gate, which is where we go out. That's called the Cardo Maximus.
Hello.
And this way is called the Cardo Minimus, from the word wad. Wad is wadi. A wadi is a dry riverbed.
It's a dry riverbed.
It's a dry riverbed. It's a riverbed that doesn't necessarily have any water in it any time of the year. In English, Yitzhaki, אם אתה יכול לצלם את רחוב הגיא. The Hebrew name for one is Guy. A piece of extraordinary Arabic calligraphy is here to denote the fact that once upon a time, in this place there was a public drinking fountain called Sibil. The reason this is here, because along this street is the main entrance for Muslims into the Temple Mount.
What is it called?
This is what it's called.
Al-Din. And what is this graffiti?
What it actually says is it's a quotation from the Quran, which of course I'm not qualified to read. Okay. I wanted to tell you about the Sibil at the bottom, which is a place where 6 times a devout Muslim will wash his hands, and 6 times he will wash his feet. And as he goes in, he will leave his shoes outside and go in barefoot into Al-Aqsa, or into Haram al-Sharif. Even though, David, he did the wisest thing which an Israeli politician could ever have done in 60 years or more.
What's that?
Get the fuck out of God.
Well, actually, if the Egyptians wouldn't take it, that was probably the best solution. But the second intifada was set up way ahead of time by Yasser Arafat. He planned it ruthlessly. He was one of the most evil men who ever lived. Mm-hmm. And his uncle was al-Husseini.
Let's give this a try. This is the entrance to the Temple Mount.
Oh, cool.
And we're taking this as an off chance that we'll be able to get in there, because the wise man back there said I have to go to the Morocco gate.
The Morocco, is this the Morocco gate? Cool.
David.
Yeah.
This bizarre construction is actually called in Arabic as it is in Hebrew. Shuk You know the Carmen market is called Shuka Carmen? And this place is called the Souk.
The souk.
No,
The souk.
Souk. Souk. Souk.
Souk.
David, I think you're going to have to use your charm on the gatekeepers and on the policemen.
My English charm.
Your English charm.
Of course. Wow. In English, I can't film? Ah.
يا عم تعالى يضربوك. منجي خكي تاخذ لهم زمان لخيبري
Where's the queue?
Tell me, did Khaki say that he was staying behind?
What's he doing? Oh, there he is. You're under arrest.
About time.
This is one of Fazl's studies. The Father Palestinian. Before
Shana Tova ליהודים טובים.
It's not kicked out in 48. This whole wall here was behind the Iron Curtain.
David,
yes.
another single sentence to teach you
My house.
what this is all about. From Isaiah.
Yeah, all people.
My name is Rabbi Tzvi Rogan, and I am a writer and a lecturer on the subject of the Temple Mount and the future temple. We are sitting now in the tunnel. It's called a tunnel, but it's not really a tunnel.
Valley.
Yeah. This is called a tunnel, but it's not a tunnel. What is it really? It's really the basement of the buildings above.
I believe that in Hebrew it's called Haggaid.
Well, I'm going back beyond that. Okay? Or no, actually forward from that. There was a valley called the Tyropean Valley, which came into the old city approximately where Damascus Gate is, and came in this direction, cuts through the western wall here, and exits the Temple Mount 28 meters east of the southwest corner.
Which you have never witnessed yourself.
Well, the valley is now filled in.
Not this, but after it cuts through the temple.
I've been inside, if that's your question.
You have?
Yes, hundreds of times. The Crusaders, the Christian Crusaders, were fighting against the Muslim rulers of the city, and at one point they fought to a standstill, and they forced a compromise which involved dividing the city, and the division was made along the valley. After the Muslims again reconquered everything,
this is all new stuff to me.
They said, we are not going to have this happen again, and they filled in the valley. So if you would go on a high tower and look down, you might see a slight lowering of the rooftops, but you would not see the valley itself. The valley itself was filled with buildings, and what they call the tunnel, the Western Wall tunnel, is really the basements of those buildings.
Correct.
And it wasn't dug by the Israeli government. It was revealed again, even though it had been already revealed in the 1800s by Charles Warren, who was an English lieutenant in the English army, and he was also an engineer who came here on a dual mission of both spying and religious purposes. So, inside here we have Mount Moriah. Mount Moriah is the place on which the first and second temples were built. Before that, it's the place where Abraham bound Isaac, and we believe also that it's the place that the dust was collected to create the first person, Adam, and it is the place where Cain and Abel brought their sacrifices, and the place where Noah brought his sacrifice after the flood. So this is a place that has been holy for thousands of years. Now, if you will ask the Muslim on the street in the 1920s, what is the significance of this place, he will tell you, and as it said in the guidebook of the Muslim authorities, the Waqf, this is the place of the Temple of Solomon. If you will ask the same type of person today, he will not know about that because they've been denying it now for 40 years. He will tell you that Muhammad went to heaven from this rock, the rock inside of the Dome of the Rock. They will point to Gabriel's footprint and various other things on the rock. Understand, in the year 688 or so, Abd al-Malik came here. Abd al-Malik was, I think, 3 rulers after Muhammad. It wasn't that they wanted to establish the holiness of the place because Muhammad went to heaven there. They wanted to establish the holiness of Muhammad by saying that he went to heaven from this place, which had already been a holy place for thousands of years.
But you're not busy disproving their worthiness, but rather improving our worthiness.
Well, our job here, we have to rebuild the temple. And
this, by the way, is what interests me personally the most to hear from you.
Okay. So, the first temple was built by King Solomon. It was destroyed by the Babylonians. The second temple was rebuilt by Zerubbabel and was destroyed ultimately. First of all, it was refurbished by Herod, and then ultimately destroyed by the Romans in the year 70. And along the way, there were 4 attempts, we shall say, to rebuild the temple. The first one in the year 118, the second in the time of the Bar Kokhba revolt, in approximately between 131 and 135, the third in the time of Julian II, who was the emperor of Rome in 361, and Hillel II was the head of the Jews in Israel, and the fourth time in the time of Khosrow II of Persia, and the Bustanai is most known from the Jewish side of the story.
Which most people are completely unaware of.
Right, but the Christians are very well aware of it. For instance, when Professor Mazur was doing the digging on the southern side of the Temple Mount,
an Israeli archaeologist,
and what you see on the southern side is his diggings. The Christian bishops and so on came to see the site, and they accused him, aren't you really planning to rebuild the temple the way they tried in the time of Khosrow? So even though these are not commonly known among the Jews, among the scientific or literary class, they are well known. So here we are in 1967. Let's go back. Previous to that, there was one of the commentators on the Torah named Rabbeinu Bachaya, approximately 800 years ago. Rabbeinu Bachaya, in his discussing the circumcision of Ishmael, says that in the merit of the circumcision of Ishmael at the age of 13, the Ishmaelites will rule for 1,330 years. They conquered in 637. If you add the 1,330 years, you come to 1967. 1967 was the first time that the Jews had the opportunity to rebuild the temple that they didn't try.
But that time frame doesn't include the occupation of the 200-year, approximately, occupation by the Crusaders. In other words,
Well,
the dates that you gave from 1 to 1 also included inside it the period.
Yeah, but the Crusader, I mean, I'm not such a historian of Crusader history, but it was kind of a back and forth kind of a thing.
Okay.
I mean, you can say that it's a coincidence, you can say what you like. I'm just reporting, this is what it said. 1967, the soldiers came in. The elders inside, when the soldiers were marching to the Temple Mount, said, we knew you were coming back.
Coming back?
Yes.
Meaning that you're the incarnation of whom?
Well, the previous Jews who had been in the Temple Mount.
Seriously?
Yes. And the rabbinic public was not ready. The rabbinic public had gone into a period of stasis. I mean, I will say, in a political sense, we are definitely in the middle of a war.
Yeah.
And we have been for a while.
Yeah.
The problem is that one side doesn't want to admit that we're in a war. The United States is under attack, traditional Europe is under attack, and Israel is, of course, under attack. I would say the war began in Korea.
Really?
World War II was the last war that the West fought to win.
True. Definitely.
By Korea, they had given up. Truman, I won't go so far as to say he was a traitor, but he gave up the war. He refused to win. And since then, the West has refused to win a war. And
possibly because of Dolorosa, possibly because of the atomic bomb.
It's a different issue.
At a time,
It's more reached than
Okay.
At a time when only the United States had the atomic bomb in an active way, they could have won Korea. And it wouldn't have been the war. The same way in 1967, Russia stopped Israel by severe threats. They could have easily conquered Damascus and Cairo. They were threatened with total destruction. That's why they stopped.
1956, too.
56, Eisenhower made them go back.
And the Russians.
And
התקרב אליו באיזשהו אופן?
אליו?
אליו.
אליו. תודה, מיסטר במאי.
so, and you had a lot of little wars along the way. Vietnam was not lost on the battlefield, it was lost politically. And 1973, 1981, the first Lebanon War, the second Lebanon War, this war that we just had now, were lost by the political echelon which said we refuse to win a war.
What do you feel about this whole phenomenon? I mean, how do you pass it on? How do you explain it? The business of the divine presence never having left the wall.
This is, well, it's, you see, the wall is kind of a replacement concept.
Of course.
What's really important is what's on the other side of the wall.
Of course.
Now,
Got it?
in 1993, I was here with my family on a visit from America. And we rented an apartment in the Old City. And my oldest daughter was graduating high school and planning to spend a year in one of the girls' schools in Ulpana. Well, a seminar, but in
Can you speak a bit higher?
So we were staying in the Old City for 2 weeks, and now I'm going with my daughter by cab to visit seminars, girls' schools in Beit Vegan. At that time they were all in Beit Vegan, now they're in Har Nof. And as the cab is approaching Beit Vegan, my daughter said to me, "What city are we in?" And I said, "Jerusalem." She said, "No, this is not Jerusalem." She was able to feel the difference in the holiness between the Old City where we were staying and Beit Vegan, which is for us a suburb. Now, as you get closer and closer to the center of the world is the rock in the Dome of the Rock. Now, I'll tell you a story. There was a rabbi named Rabbi Galinkin, and he told two stories. He was in a cab in New York, and he was speaking to another Israeli in Hebrew, and the cab driver asked, where are you from? And he said, Jerusalem, in Israel. And the cab driver asked him, how many people are there in Jerusalem? And he said, 500,000. How many people in Israel? 5 million. And the cab driver said, you're a liar. He said, what do you mean? He said, I'm from Jakarta. There are 20 million people in Jakarta. There are 120 million people in Indonesia. And you never read about them in the newspaper. Here, every day, Jerusalem, Israel, Israel, Jerusalem. It can't be there are only 5 million people in the whole country. When Yitzhak Rabin died, and I was not a fan of his, not before he died and not after he died. When he died, more heads of state came to his funeral than went to the funeral of the Emperor of Japan, who died approximately at the same time. Not because he was a great man, but because he represented the revived state of the Jews. And I'm not a big fan of this state either. I'm not, standing there demonstrating with the Iranians, but well, we think it's going away soon. But neither here nor there. The point is that the world recognizes that this is where it's at. How many, what do they call those, collateral casualties were there in Chechnya and all those other little skirmishes around the world? How much are people destroying the Kurds and so on? And nobody really cares. And here we declare we're going to build 100 houses. And all of a sudden the whole world is interested. Why? Did anyone ask if you could build in Surrey or in Suffolk or in Potomac, Maryland? Did anyone ask about all the places that were stolen from the American Indians? No. This is where it matters. Right here, this is the center of the world. This is the center of the world's attention. Now, as we get from Bayit Vegan, we come into the walled city. And not all of the walled city is the original holy city. From the south, it extends beyond the walls. In this direction, when you get to the road that comes from Jaffa Gate, that's the original wall from the First Temple period.
This is the Western Wall, built 2,000 years ago at the time of King Herod. This is the center of all the madness that we're having today in the world. The Arab-Israeli conflict, the Christian-Arab conflict, the Crusaders. Everything began in this city because, of course, Judaism starts in this city, and Christianity is an offshoot. It's Judaism light. Judaism where you don't need to be circumcised. Judaism where you don't have to follow all 613 laws. Saul of Tarsus, who was a complete madman, decided to sell Jesus as the Son of God to the West as a way of exporting a sort of cult of Judaism, and he succeeded brilliantly. It took a few centuries for the Church of Rome to embrace this, but it's the only way that Europe became a modern, civilized continent was by embracing old Roman and Greek philosophy and the past, and combining that with the Jewish Christianity that helped create the modern world that we live in today. And people talk about the Templars and the Crusaders and all of this stuff. That all begins here. All the madness, all the battles, all the Islam actually doesn't begin here, but the Muslims claim ownership of this anyway, because in the Quran they wrote that Muhammad went to heaven here in Jerusalem. I don't believe it, but I don't believe in any of this stuff. But I'm telling you now, all the madness begins here. So maybe Jerusalem syndrome has taken on hold of the whole world for the last 2,000 years. It has its benefits in Jewish ethics, in Christian ethics, and it has its madness in slitting throats and ISIS. Okay, here we have it. The Western Wall, where even George Bush says a prayer. Don't you put a message? What's the thing about putting a note into the wall? How does that work?
And then all of your wishes come true, or best wish will come true.
Okay, I have to put a wish today for my neighbor Debbie that everything's going to go right with all her estates. So you have to help me with that.
Especially real estate.
Especially what?
Real estate, as you said.
Yeah, especially the real estate, because she's going through lots of problems and she doesn't deserve this. So if I can do that, put a note in this wall, then hopefully she actually believes it'll help. And she's totally secular. So maybe a bit of magic works sometimes in this world. Because if you believe, that's it.
There's something here. There's something here that's different. There's something here for sure. Everyone here feels there's something special and different.
Do you feel that?
Of course. If all Jewish people have a special vision, a special ability to see beyond the natural reality. We all see that there's something beyond nature. Like for instance, in the last war, all these miracles that happen. You see a miracle, you say, well, that's a miracle. God is interfering in the physical world and making this thing. But in certain places, that realization is stronger. And here is the place where it's really, where it's most visceral.
So when you're looking at the Western Wall, which is the remains of the temple, which was destroyed in 70 AD, or was it 135? It was destroyed in 70 AD. Okay. And on the other side, what is on the other side of the wall?
On the other side is the house of God.
Exactly. Okay.
So why is it called the house of God?
The old temple.
Why is it called the house of God? What is it about? What is it about that makes the house of God more than any other particle in the universe? God is everywhere.
Yeah.
So the answer is that's where God is most revealed.
Okay.
God is everywhere. He's unlimited. You can't limit him to any particular space or time. But that place is where he chose to reveal himself more than anywhere else in creation. So people come here, they see it, they feel it. It's very felt. That's why you see. Why do millions of people come here every year? Why are they so turned on by this place? What is there to see here? It's like nothing. Why are they so turned on by it? Because there's over time. People see that there's something, they feel something different here. They maybe make some kind of change in their life. Maybe they go back to change people. I don't know. I haven't interviewed them.
I've got another question. The Temple Mount, that's on top of it, behind upstairs. That is an area, thanks to the Moshe Dayan gave it to Jordan, right? What is up there for a Jew and a Christian and not a Muslim? What is up there on the Temple Mount? Tell me what's special about it.
At this point, there's nothing. It's only destruction. There's only destruction.
There's only destruction.
There's only destruction.
I keep seeing videos of people going up there.
You want to feel. You want to really be slapped in the face with what is going on in the world. You go up there, you see what is supposed to be a celebration of the harmony and beauty and truth is just being trampled upon. Yeah. And so there's nothing to see there now. Until the Messiah comes, we can't really see it with physical eyes what that place is supposed to be. Only when there's a temple and when the Jewish people are in control, then there will be a true revelation of what is supposed to be there and what's supposed to be in the rest of the world.
Now the second temple, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, is that on top of what was the site of the second temple?
Oh, we don't know.
You don't know? It's funny because if you were allowed to excavate, you would know.
Possibly, they say that you could know the place of the altar from the remains of the animal remains, and then maybe some kind of fossilized remains that would be under that. But the truth is that the most specific place in the temple is the place of the altar. The place of the altar never changes. That's the place where Adam, when he first offered up his first offering, that's the place where Abraham offered up Isaac. It's the exact same place. And so that place we can only know by prophecy. It has to come down into a prophet in the generation, and he'll tell us where that place is.
His name.
Buddhist syndrome.
His name is. What was his name?
Menachem Mendel Schneerson. Rabbi Schneerson.
And was he from Israel?
He was a Jew.
Yeah, but was he from Israel or was he from Europe?
No, he was born in Russia, and he moved to Germany, to France, and then eventually to America.
Okay, so he died 20 years ago. And so what was it about him that appealed to people? What was his message?
His vision religion was that the Jewish people was more alive after the Holocaust than before the Holocaust.
For the ones who are alive, that might be true.
No, but even those who were alive didn't believe it.
What does it mean?
The whole world didn't believe that the Jewish people had any future after the Holocaust. He was the only one who said that now the Jewish people have a real future. Now they're really going to start to flourish. In 1950, if you would have asked someone who was in the business of making sociological predictions if the Jewish religion was going to still be extant in a few years, they would tell you no future.
But in fact, what he says has come true, because the Jewish people have come back very strong.
Of course.
Not just with the state of Israel.
Stronger than we've ever been.
Stronger than ever, but also internationally.
At any other time in world history, the Jewish people are more faithful, more optimistic, more alive, more young, more rich, more healthy.
But also more fragile as well.
This is the true fulfillment of all the Messianic prophecies as far as what the Jewish people are supposed to look like in the Messianic times. This is look around you in the land of Israel. This is for sure how it's supposed to be.
Gog and Magog, catastrophe, and then...
No, that's done with. We're basically living in the times that the prophets predicted. This is times of prosperity, times of peace, and all that we're waiting for is for the Messiah to come and redeem us. All we're waiting for. It's a big.
It's interesting,
it's a big lacking.
because if you look at the Middle East now, the Arab world is at its worst ever. It's falling completely apart, but Israel thrives. I mean, you have to go into. I have friends from Syria and those countries. Their world has completely and utterly collapsed, and Jordan and Saudi are just holding on the edge of chaos.
They only say it's completely collapsed because for a long time they measured their success by the success of the top percentile, and really that's not the way God looks at it. God looks at every individual, and every individual has worth in God's eyes. And when there's a society that's built on one individual benefiting from many individuals suffering, that's not good in God's eyes. And so basically, what seems to the world as this catastrophe is actually a very positive and beneficial revelation of God's hand, God's desire that every individual in the world should be free to choose to have a good life, to have an ethical life. And until they free themselves from the shackles of barbarianism, of this traditional society where one person decides for a million people, they can't make that decision. They can't live true ethical lives.
So maybe through disaster they'll rise out of it and change.
Every change requires some kind of shaking. But you see that it's happening in a way that is more peaceful than ever before in world history. Never has change been so, especially in such violent cultures. The fact that it's taken its toll, but compared to the violence of the people, it's minimal. These people, they've been living for thousands of years just by shedding blood. That's been their lifestyle, and so
What about the state of Israel? Now, there are various views. Tel Aviv syndrome says the state of Israel is terrible, it's falling apart, Europe hates us. And then I come over to Jerusalem, and it seems a lot more positive. So Jerusalem syndrome within Israel seems to be, I mean, I see these guys dancing and singing in there, what were they called? Yeah. And they're completely different from the Tel Aviv cappuccino set. So I'm actually getting a positive vibe of Israel is stronger here than over there. What do you think?
It says that before the light, the revelation of the light, the darkness becomes the greatest.
Yeah.
Because in order for new light to come into the world, the old light has to recede. And so if a person's addicted to the old ways, the old light, the old definitions of success, so then all you're seeing is lack of success, drudgery, danger. But if you're opening up your eyes to the opportunities in the future, and you're seeing that we're living in a world where communication channels have opened up a millionfold over the last 10 or 20 years. People are communicating over distances and over culture gaps that has never been before. Where the opportunity to change people's minds is in a split of a second. So if you look from an opportunistic perspective, the opportunities are endless. If you look at it from predictability, how much predictability is there's much less predictability. If you're addicted to predictability, you're not liking this world. But if you're into opportunities, then this is the world for you.
So in fact, you're very optimistic, and in fact, I'm not Israeli like my friend here who lives in Australia. I'm a Canadian who lives in England. But a lot of Israelis panic about the future of their country, but their country seems to have a great future viewed from the Jerusalem perspective. From your perspective, it's very positive. And you're not worried about all the ICs and the slitting throats and all the stuff happening. That can't touch you, right?
Look, we want the violence to end. We don't want there to be any more evil in the world, and so that's why we have to live seriously. We have to take these things seriously. We have to take it as a message, personal message in our lives, that we have to make ourselves better in order to make the world better. But if we're going to do that, we have to believe that it's all leading up to a very soon it's gonna reveal itself to be purely goodness, and so. A person who's living pessimistically is not going to tap into the opportunities. A person who's living optimistically, and that's what you see is the message of the scriptures. You never see Moses saying, "Oh, I don't know if we'll get to the land. I have doubts." You never see Moses doing that. Why? Because that's a person who's truly connected to God. He knows we're on a process here. We're on a path. If you're walking on the path, so then you're never stopping.
ברוך אתה
אדוני
אדוני
אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר קידשנו במצוותיו וציוונו להוניח תפילין
הגזמת ברוך אתה
אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר קידשנו במצוותיו וציוונו להתעטף
בציצית
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם
אשר בחרבנו
חבר מכל העמים
ונתננו את תורתו ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה שמע ישראל
אדוני אחד ברוך שם כבוד מלכותו לעולם
יפה מאוד
David, I'll kill you.
No, the picture, we'll make a picture.
I become the joke.
Very happy. Hashem, God is very happy. Thank you.
Wonderful.
He's laughing. He's very joyful.
Wonderful. Very good. Thank you very much.
Now you're ready for a new year. This is a whole new year. Shana Tova
umetuka. Do you want me to email you a picture? Wait, do you want me to show you the picture?
It's okay. I see this.
No, I'll show you a picture. I told you.
אתה אולי לא תאמין, אבל אתה גם שינית את החיים שלנו.
תודה רבה.
כל אחד עוזר לשני.
זה לא האמנתי שיקרה לי היום. אתה רואה, it's not predictable, as you said, unpredictable.
Do you want a copy? Do you want me to email it to you?
שנה טובה.
תודה וחתימה טובה. שנה טובה.
תכנתנו לעשות מצווה, אתה רואה? נגד הצומק.
How is that?
No.
Isaac, you're a star. You're an absolute star.
Let's go to the church now.
Okay.
Let's go to the mosque. Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar.
No, we can't have any of that stuff.
David, don't film me. I got a syndrome. I'm flying. I'm the Messiah. I'm the Messiah. Here.
I won't show this to Benji.
Don't show to anyone. Don't show to Benji.